Unit 2. Procedures and costs of establishing business entities. Before establishing a business entity, regardless of its chosen form, it is necessary to obtain information about any possible additional conditions necessary for a specific business. The conditions are published on the EVEM webpage. A sole proprietor status can be obtained by any person capable of doing business, insofar as the person is not a tax debtor or is not on the list of tax defaulters at the Financial Administration of Republic of Slovenia. In some business sectors, intellectual services for example, there are no specific condition for pursuing the business. Proprietor only needs a business place, he can even do business from home. However, in the case of a number of sectors, certain conditions must be fulfilled before starting the business, specific permits, licenses to be obtained. The conditions are published on EVEM webpage. Obtaining a sole proprietor status is very easy. It takes only 3 steps which can all be done on one of the VEM points or via the EVEM portal. For registration via the EVEM portal, a digital certificate is required which can be ordered by any natural person for free at one of the administrative units. One only needs a personal document. The first step is registering in the AJPES Business Register. This is done by application for entry into the Business Register of Slovenia form, which can be in electronic or paper form. The second step is to register with the Financial Administration of the Republic of Slovenia. Sole proprietor needs to define locations where the business activities will take place and where the revenues will be generated, as well as whether he has any business units or capital investments in home country and or abroad, whether he has any accounts abroad and their numbers, and all potential business-related persons. Sole proprietor also estimates the amount of annual turnover, which is the basis for determining the advance tax payment. In addition, he decides whether to claim the actual costs taxation or a flat rate taxation. The majority of new sole proprietors opt for the second as it simplifies their business operations, no accounting is needed, and the tax rate is low, only 4% of the annual turnover. The third and last step is registration into the health insurance at the Health Insurance Institute of the Republic of Slovenia. Registration is done with the form entitled Registration in Compulsory Social Insurance, M1 form. Sole proprietor receives the decision on the business registration a day after the establishment. If in a hurry, he can personally pick it up on the same day at the local AJPES office. The establishment procedure for a supplementary sole proprietor is the same, except that in this case the entrepreneur needs to fulfill the requirement that he is employed full-time with another employer. The consent of the employer is not necessary. In order to enter into the business register, the future sole proprietor must bring a valid personal identification document and a Slovenian tax number to one of the VEM points, and state the following. In case that there are no specific requirements regarding the premises or business performance, and that the future proprietor has provided all the necessary documentation and information, the entire procedure can be carried out at one of the VEM points in only 1 hour. Registration is done at one of the VEM points or via the EVEM portal. At a VEM point, the whole procedure is carried out. VEM employees submit applications to AJPES, FURS and ZZZS. All 3 steps needed for establishment. At VEM points, registration procedures are generally free of charge. A sole proprietor can open a transaction account for business, but use it for both private and business purposes. The transaction account must be public. If the future sole proprietor is not the owner of the real estate of the business address where he will carry out his activities, he must submit a validated owner's permission to pursue business activities at that address. Before a future sole proprietor visits one of the VEM points, make sure that he has all necessary documentation. After the registration, a sole proprietor needs to, as soon as possible, open a business account so that he can start with business financial transactions. Sole proprietor also needs to select high-quality accounting service provider, except if he opts for flat-rate taxation. If sole proprietor will make business with natural persons and receive payments in cash, he must have a fiscal cash register which he needs to obtain at Financial Administration of Republic of Slovenia. Limited liability company is the most common form of companies registered in Slovenia. It can be established through a VEM point quickly, easily and without a registration fee. Condition for establishing limited liability company via one of the VEM points are as follows. All funding contributions are in cash and are paid up prior to the submission of the registration form. Founders have signed the standard business establishment contract. In the case that there is only one founder, the company's decisions are kept electronically. In case that these conditions are not met, for limited liability company establishment notary is required. A foreign citizen can set up a limited liability company in Slovenia under the same conditions as Slovenian citizens. Prior to the registration, he only needs to obtain the Slovenian tax number. All founders and managing directors of the company must be present at a VEM point. In the event that the founder is a legal person, its legal representative must be present. All founders and legal representatives must personally sign the documents at a VEM point on the same day that all the documents were created, among others the Establishment Act. After entering the establishment form at VEM point, a temporary or a deposit account needs to be opened at the selected bank. For this, only the Establishment Act is needed. Founders deposit the founding capital, €7,500 minimum, on the account. The next step is to send a proof of depositing the founding capital on the temporary account to the VEM point where the procedure was started. When the founders receive the decision on registration of the company into the business register and the tax number of the company, they can convert temporary account with the help of these two documents into a regular business account at the selected bank. Some of the further steps needed. Obtaining a permit to perform selected business activity, if necessary, please check the requirements for specific businesses here. For a manager without employee status, an application for payment of Social Security contributions is required. Financial Administration of Republic of Slovenia must be notified of the selected bookkeeping system. Safety and health at work regulations have to be respected. Requirements depend on specific businesses. When registering limited liability company, natural persons needs a personal document, their tax or personal identification number, and an indication of a share of the founding capital. All legal persons as founders need a short version of the extract from the Register of Companies, personal documents of their founders and legal representatives, the business tax number, and an indication of a share of the funding capital. In addition to the above-mentioned documents, at the VEM point founders need to provide data on in case that none of the founders is not the owner of the real estate on the location of the business address, a written consent from the owner of the real estate is needed. At the VEM point, the following documents will be prepared. After the submission of a complete application to the court, the registration decision is, on average, issued within 4 days. Registration is done at one of the VEM points or via the EVEM portal. Registration through VEM points is free of charge. In the event that the founder is not the owner of the facility where the business address of the company is set, he must attach a certified statement from the owner of the premises. In the statement, the owner authorizes the company to operate at this address. The verification of the statement is free of charge at the VEM point. The statement doesn't need to be verified if the owner of the building is physically present at VEM point or if the founder obtains permission from the Republic of Slovenia, the local community or other competent housing authority. In order to be completely familiar with the procedure and required documentation, it is recommended that you as a future FDI advisor prepare all the necessary documentation and personally revise all registration procedures, up to the point of filing the documents to the relevant organizations. Further information about registration procedure for limited liability company is available on the EVEM website. More about safety and health at work regulations.